All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And greetings from the mothership, everybody. That's right. Everything's cool. Everyone just kick it on back. It's all going to end up okay. I know we're hitting a little clear air turbulence once in a while, but it'll all be okay. We've had another great morning where we start with some technical thing I don't understand.
Morning.
And I don't know whether it's, of course, Tony, who is on board here.
Thanks,
and
Tony.
he is the ninja technical guy.
You also could blame the problems on the equipment that I supplied, so it is my
Yeah,
fault.
he was going to say, I don't know what it is with you. With me, all my stuff works. The Power Mac, the replay machines. It's your stuff.
Thanks, Tony.
So we had a little bit of a pointing fingers at each other session. It was kind of fun. Sorry you missed that, Kim.
Kim, how are you?
How was your little Nicky Maduro open, which then now is followed by a little Mark Thompson, and then you finished big with your own show. How's that working out?
There was nothing little about it. It was big and fabulous.
Oh, okay. Well, this is a little show. I'm very proud of our little show. So maybe it's a come down for you, but it's great to have you here nonetheless.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah. All right, let's go. I got a couple of interesting emails and also some stuff I will respond to, comments. We read all of your comments that come in after hours. So if you're watching the show or if you listen and jump on YouTube and you leave a comment, I will see it and I'll try to respond to it. And if you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe and hit the notification bell that's right below the video, and then you'll know. It's a little, as I say, bell. And you'll know whenever there's a new video that drops. So we break the show out into videos today.
Totally free to do that, by the way. Just click subscribe,
everything's free.
Click like, click the notification bell, all free.
Right.
Go for it.
Exactly.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah, very well done. Now, I would say also, speaking of free stuff, smash the like button like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Thank you for the thumbs up. Now, I will tell you, and you can comfortably hit the thumbs up because David Katz, the former federal prosecutor, now a defense attorney, he will join us today and he will offer analysis on this new filing. Trump, of course, will be arraigned today. There is a gaggle of media there, and there are also a number of onlookers in Washington, D.C., but I will remind you, it's very possible you won't see Trump at all go into the court. Maybe you have some insight on this, Kim, or maybe some new reporting on it. But, it's possible that Trump can enter and leave the D.C. court at the federal court building without there actually being any sort of perp walkish wave to the crowd.
No perp walk? I want the perp walk.
I know everybody wants
the
it.
Booking photo. I want the orange jumpsuit. I want the perp walk. I want the mug shot.
Yeah, you want to really, well...
There's never been anything like this.
That we made, as I've told you before, I know that is the dream to have, Trump led away in cuffs and fingerprinted and that mugshot. There'll be no mugshot, of course. Mugshots are really designed to give, I think, law enforcement, you should check this.
Google it.
Law enforcement a sense of what somebody looks like, like should they need that information for future. You can run the scenarios yourself. Clearly, you don't need it in the case of Donald Trump. Everybody knows what he looks like. So as a public figure, it's not really an issue. So there are no mugshots.
Although, and it's not applicable today, but I did hear that, read a story yesterday that the sheriff in the county in Georgia where the barricades are put up around the courthouse said if he's indicted here, there will be a booking photo.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
Well, I guess that's great. If you want booking photos, I guess Georgia's the place to go. David Katz will be along anyway, and we'll dissect the situation. I want to speak to the politics of the moment. And I'll get to that in a second. Belinda Waymouth will be along with It's the Planet Stupid. We'll talk about the Joshua Tree, the fire that's burning out of control there. We may even do that prior to her arrival because she wants to talk about some other stuff there. Look, the planet's on fire. Even the southern hemisphere where it's wintertime, temperatures are running 20 degrees or 25 or even 30 degrees above normal. It's craziness. Iran, have you seen the pictures out of Iran? They've got, the people are dying from the heat there. Oh. And people are dying from the heat here. In the Southwest and West. So there's a lot to do. Thank you so much for being here. Love that you're here. Let's get going.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I promised you some. I want to do two things. First of all, my credibility glasses just dropped, so let me just go get them.
Uh-oh. I hope they didn't break. Are they all right?
No, they're okay, but I blame Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Poor Tony.
The deal is that I got some comments yesterday.
Oh.
Let me just see if I can find them to start the show with some comments. And
as you look for them, I will say that I just Googled it when you talked about the heat in Iran, because I wasn't aware in that country specifically. And they shut the country down for 2 days because it was so hot. Yeah. So,
wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know they shut it down. I didn't know how you do that, but I guess everything just stops.
They say they declared a 2-day public holiday because of the extreme heat. They're like, everybody go. You don't have to work. You just stay cool. Yeah.
On the comments I made about the Chinese zoo yesterday, remember the controversy about the bear that seemed to stand there on its hind legs and wave or even stand up and did have a sort of human-like, well, I made the comment like, I made a snide comment about the fact that that is not a natural habitat for a bear. I made it sarcastically that like, wow, it blends right in with that natural habitat. It's it's this concrete horror that is the Chinese zoo. Rant sent me a note saying, Mark, I love you a ton, but zoos serve a vital purpose. Most people only feel curiosity and empathy for animals that they can see and or touch. Without zoos, there would be a lot, in capital letters, more extinct species of animals and more animals sent into extinction due to lack of human interest. Animals living in zoos also serve to shame industry into spending a fraction of a percent of their profit to not completely clear cut and strip mine all the environment. Make zoo environments better, certainly, but understand that zoos are necessary for the survival of many species. I would say this to that. Some of what you've said is true, of course, and I do agree that the better zoos do serve some of the interests to which you've referred. That is, bringing people in closer contact, making people appreciate perhaps the fragile nature of species, and maybe more to the point, maybe this should be the most important point, also, sadly, zoos are important because otherwise there are species going completely extinct. So without zoos, you have no continuing of that species. That is happening in, sadly, large numbers. What I would say, I would take issue with two different things. I don't want to get too big a deal with this, but I'll just quickly address it. I take issue with the fact that industry is being shamed into spending a fraction of a percent of their profit to not completely clear-cut and strip mine. I've seen no indication that industry is not clear-cutting and strip mining. I've no indication at all. I think they are not shamed in the least. The only thing they're ashamed of is they're not getting the top bottom line dollar or euro for that company's stock. That's the only thing they care about. So I don't think there's any shame in... Now, I think you can try to shame them in media and, corporations can be cowed for a moment, but ultimately I think they continue. We could go back and forth on that, and maybe you can give me examples. I'm intrigued by that notion. To what extent is industry actually cowed by the fact that you bring to light, the damage they're doing, or that you somehow elevate, and that's not what's happening here, obviously, you elevate, in this case, the relationship between the animal kingdom and the human species. All right, so that's that. But the other thing I would say is, hey, look, That Chinese zoo is an abomination. You saw it. You saw that bear enclosure. It's indefensible, okay? So under no circumstances do I support any zoo that essentially looks like a roadside attraction. It's horrible. It's grotesque, and it reflects awfully on our species, which already doesn't have a lot to recommend it. So that's my answer to that, but I really appreciate your input, and I do like the back and forth, so I don't, I'm open to be educated, and I'm open to be elevated in my perspective. So I thank you for that.
There are zoos that have programs where, they're trying to save a species. They're trying to, breed in captivity. They're trying to make them not be endangered anymore. But I don't think you can say, oh, okay, well, a corporation needs to be shamed, so let's scoop up an animal and dump them into captivity and take away their, wildlife habitat and their living in nature just to shame a company. I don't know. I go to zoos. I've been to zoos. I have kids. We go to the San Francisco Zoo, and it's a nice zoo. But I go to some enclosures like the monkeys enclosures and the apes, and I feel sad for them.
Sure.
No matter how much we try to make it nice, look at the rocks there, and they've got this water, and there's a little, moat to keep them safe, and it's still like they should be in the wild living.
No, I'm sorry. Look at that. I mean, you can look at that and go, oh, look at the water. There's a moat. No, I look at that and I just see a big concrete enclosure where, people are looking in. It's awful. I don't know. Maybe I'm just so, I feel so strongly about what we've done to so many of these species that I'm not an objective observer anymore. I don't know. But I mean, it is true what Huge in Japan says, some zoos are no better than traveling circuses, but there must be a distinction between the good ones and the bad ones. Yes, and that's, I think, what Kim is saying too, that there are good ones and bad ones. Or you can say there are bad ones and badder ones. That's kind of but I understand that. And then Tom reminds us of the important stuff, which is that abomination is a ding word. So, anyway, that's on that. Thank you for that comment in After Hours Trading. That comment came in, and I appreciated it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I do want to mention that we are waiting for the arraignment of the former president, and I think it's going to happen
4
right
p.m.
after we
Eastern.
get off the air, right?
Yeah, 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Eastern. So
So
it'll happen during the after party. That's when it'll happen.
Oh, that's great. So Kim and John will have it for you in the after party. I will now update a couple of other things that are going on. One of which is the actors' strike. That's going on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The actors' strike, they are saying, get ready. This is from Fran Drescher, to really dig in for what could be another 6 months of this.
What?
Yeah. Drescher said that the AMPTP, which I talked about yesterday, represents more than 350 member companies. They're the organization charged with repping all of those studios and those other companies. Okay. Yeah, you may have trouble with that, Tony, just before you. They're offering compensation that amounts to less than what actors were making in 2020. Less than what actors were making in 2020. That's a good shot to linger on, I think. There she is. I mean, the business model changed, and they're unwilling to change the contract, she says. She further explained that 86% of the union's members don't make the minimum wage required to receive health benefits, which is less than $27,000 a year. That's something we've talked about as well. It's a pyramid. Most of the people are way down the pyramid who are actors or in this union. These are hardworking people, Drescher said. They want the same things for their children that all of those CEOs that are making large fortunes want for their children. Since Hollywood came to a screeching halt 19 days ago, Drescher said there has been no progress made with the AMPTP. Quote, I don't know whether they're punishing us or what, she said. We gave them an unprecedented 12-day extension to try to come to a meeting of the minds to avert a strike, but nothing really came out of that. From the minute we said we were on strike now, after the extension ran out, we said, we are happy to continue negotiating. Let's keep talking. And they said, no. In a statement, AMPTP said, "We remain committed to finding a path to mutually beneficial deals for both unions." There's also news out of the Writers Guild that there is return to the negotiating table, but Variety is saying that the WGA is telling, and this is from the leadership of the WGA, telling its rank and file, don't get your hopes up. We actually don't think that there is much happening from this meeting. This is a meeting to discuss a meeting, is what John Rogers, who a member of the WGA negotiating committee picketing outside of Warner Brothers, was saying. We're trying to urge members to remember that this is a great first step, but not to get your hopes up too much. That's a major labor action in this country, the WGA and the SAG strike. In fact, these Hollywood walkouts, they sometimes don't get everything they want. Oftentimes, they're not worth it. But this is definitely an inflection moment. This will not be a shock to you. Polls show more Americans support striking writers and actors than they support the studios. Yeah, I mean, again, no shock. Nearly 3 out of 4 Americans surveyed said they were aware of the strike, and 60% said they were at least, quote, somewhat aware of the issues in the dispute. As they weigh those issues, the public generally feels more sympathy toward the actors and writers than the studios and the networks and the streamers. 38% of respondents say they sympathize more with the striking actors and writers. Just 7% sympathize more with the entertainment and media corporations represented by the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers.
Who sympathizes with those people?
Yeah,
the people sucking in all the cash? Whoa, we feel so bad for you.
Oh, my God.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It does feel like the arithmetic is fairly straightforward on that. Yeah.
Such a bummer that you're making so much money and not sharing it with all the people that are working for you. Wow. Yeah.
It is, there's something else I just say that's just as a coda to all of this. Coda would be a ding word. The promise of technology. One should maybe even take this and you in your own life to see it, and we see it with AI now, and AI is very much affecting this WGA situation. But the promise of technology is always full of all of this potential that is talked about in all of these exciting, dynamic ways. When Uber started, oh my God, you could get a car anytime you wanted it, and it was a black town car that showed up for you. And the guy was like a real professional driver, and they were everywhere. It started in San Francisco.
For half the price of a taxi, right?
Exactly, and it was cheaper.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is amazing. And that original model was just that, right? It was to take those town cars and other rides that were, doing professional ferrying of people to SFO or to wherever, back and forth. In their downtime, they would be able to make additional money ferrying people like us, civilians who didn't normally take car service, to wherever we're going. So really cool. And as Kim says, and it seemed like, it was a discounted service as well. Cut to, every a-hole with a car now drives for Uber and Lyft. The rates are just as high as a cab, and sure, you can tell them you need it. They say they're going to be there in 5 minutes. 15 minutes later, they cancel the ride completely. All of a sudden, the potential of this great technology, and they gave them a pass in terms of licensing and certifications across the country, and not only across the country, across the world. And now what is Uber and Lyft and these rideshare? They're not fulfilling the promise. They're just not. Now, I get some people only drive for Lyft at certain times, and maybe for certain people, they are working out. But we're hearing more and more, I can't make a living driving for Uber and Lyft. I have to have another side hustle. So my point is simply, the promise of technology is not always what they say it is. And so to the WGA, the promise of AI is, and the promise of the streamers is something to really be looked at with an extremely scrutinizing eye. And when streaming first started, everybody thought, hey, we'll cut the cord. This is going to be great. I've got my streamers, my Netflix, my Amazon. I've got my HBO. Back then it was called HBO. Now it's Max, whatever.
Yeah.
ESPN. Now look at it. You have to have all of these things. They're $9 to $15 a month. Some might be $20 a month. Disney Plus. You have to add all these Paramount Plus. And you still need cable or whatever to get you the internet. So you're paying for, you're not cutting a cable. You just change your relationship with the cable.
That's
and
right.
into the cable are all of these services that you're paying money for. I'm just trying to say the dynamic is different. The potential, the BS of how the streaming universe is going to change your life for the better, so far, don't see it. And if you're a worker, a writer, an actor, a performer, even a producer, they're not getting the monies they were getting. So the promise of streaming is a promise that has yet to be realized. So keep it in mind as new technologies come to the fore. I mean, the reality is they don't always work out the way they're promised to work out.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I would love to do, if it's okay with you. Now, you guys, I wanted to do something on the show that is, I need your help, both of you, Kim and Tony.
Yeah.
I need you to watch, and maybe tell Albert when he gets, remind me to tell Albert. I need you to watch the chat, because when I'm talking, I don't get a chance to really read the chat much. Okay. And I notice that there are a lot of things that are said that are provocative. Sometimes, Kim, I think yesterday you threw up a really good comment, and I was able to, somebody challenging me about something or whatever, and I was able to speak to it. And so I want to make sure that we put those aside, and what I'd like to do is, and I'll get to this one in a second, what I'd like to do is even set apart a little part of the show for, comments that have come in. So if you can just mark them, we can do that as a separate part of the show, and I can handle everybody and their comments, and even if I've got to double back. The same way we'd take calls on KGO, for example, when we were doing KGO, about something that we were talking about last segment or whatever. So LAX Paint says, I haven't had cable in over 15 years. I got tired of paying for things that I did not watch. Now I watch what I want online without paying any streaming company a dime. Wow. I mean,
What?
I know. That sounds like good. I have to say, I like that idea.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
15 years ago, you were really early to that party. I mean, very impressive. Support the actors and writers by canceling your streaming and such. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that supports the actors or not. Maybe it does. They're not calling on us to do that yet, I don't think. But, I mean, certainly it can be talked about as a possibility. I wanted to do some Law and Disorder. Tony, do I have time to do it now? Or do I wait? I've got Jefferson Graham coming up in the next half hour as well.
Do you want to do news early?
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. We'll do news now. And then when I come back, I've got Law and Disorder. And by the way, the Law and Disorder, it does relate to a January 6th rioter who Tucker Carlson had as a guest, who is arrested by the FBI, everybody. That's right. I also have a story about workers fighting back, about a new way to keep track of some of the stuff that might get jacked in various smash and grabs. So there's quite a bit coming up in Law and Disorder. I'd love to get to that. And I'm putting, of course, the crown jewel of Law and Disorder, which is the arraignment of the former president, Trump. I'm putting that aside until David Katz, the great former federal prosecutor, now on the defense side of the table, until he arrives just after 11 o'clock. So we'll do that after Kim's news. Kim is here, and it's exciting. I mean, I know she's got her own show, so now she's kind of almost a little too big for our show, I think. You know what I mean?
Kim, how are you?
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, I feel it.
Morning.
I feel that you're kind of over us in a way, if I can say it.
It's not true.
No, I don't know. You say it, but I feel
you can't say these things. I'm not leaving the show. I mean, I'm not doing it.
Well, I'm just saying in a way, you've already left the show. Your mind is elsewhere.
Yeah. No, you're gonna have to fire me. That's it.
All right. Okay. Much to do. Thank you for being here, Mark Thompson's show. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, while Mark is waiting to talk about former President Trump, I am not. Kim McAllister here on the Mark Thompson Show. And yes, today is the day the former president will soon answer to charges for his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. The Justice Department claims Trump was determined to remain in power despite having lost the election. Trump claims the charges are an attempt by President Biden to interfere with the upcoming presidential election. And already the motorcade is being filmed leaving the president's place where he is staying and heading off to the courthouse. So that that is being. I tried to put up the.
That's a great picture, though. I kind of like that picture.
Yeah, but yeah, I do have the CNN footage of the former president, heading off to face the music, as they say. Let's see if I can.
Yeah. There it is.
Oh, I have to take the picture down.
Got the watercade. The motorcade. Yeah.
There he is, motorcade. Off he goes. And the big headline on CNN is Trump en route to court for arraignment. Huh. Yes, there he goes. So that's happening on the East Coast today. And again, the arraignment scheduled for 4:00 this afternoon. And that is 1 p.m. our time. So we'll be following that story all day long. But speaking of Trump and this smirky looking picture of him, questions are being raised over why Mark Meadows and Jared Kushner are not mentioned in the latest indictment against Donald Trump. A former Trump fixer, Michael Cohen, told CNN it's possible they could be cooperating witnesses in the case against Trump for his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Cohen asked how it's possible that Kushner, who is Trump's son-in-law and former advisor, is not listed when he was, quote, in Donald's lap the entire time. He said he believes Kushner and Meadows would cooperate against Trump in a heartbeat. Cohen was Trump's former attorney. So, on to the economy we go.
I like that Cohen in that same interview said, Bill, because we have some Bill Barr stuff. We might still play it for you if there's time. Mm-hmm. But Barr was on CNN. And Cohen, though, who's also on CNN, said, in commenting on what Barr had said, well, Barr was Trump's fixer after me. And I thought, thank you. That's exactly right. I hate this varnishing of history as though Bill Barr is some a paragon of virtue and jurisprudence. The reality is Bill Barr was he carried the water for the corrupt administration, and he was Trump's fixer. He did it with the Mueller report and beyond. So you want to talk about the weaponization of the Justice Department, Bill Barr? Hey, look in the mirror. Anyway, I was glad that you quoted Cohen, and I was glad that he made those comments on CNN.
Half of Americans say the U.S. economy is still getting worse. That, according to a CNN poll, 51% of Americans said the economy is continuing its downturn despite some positive indicators. The U.S. GDP grew more than expected in the second quarter of 2023, and inflation has continued to ease up. Some big doings today in Tennessee. This is where, and I don't even remember these guys. I call them the Justins.
Sure.
But voters are set to decide in a special election today whether to keep state representatives Justin Pearson and Justin Jones in office. The Republican-dominated state house expelled these two Democrats in April after they took part in a protest on the House floor in favor of stronger gun laws. That after a mass shooting that killed 6 people at a Christian school. So, special election going on today. Here in California, the grapevines, the vineyards, it looks so peaceful, but many grape growers in Sonoma and Mendocino counties are upset because of a proposed new set of rules designed to protect local waterways and fish habitats. This program, targeting about 1,500 grape growers, is aimed at reducing the amount of sediment and pesticides that end up in our waterways. Growers would be subject to more well and groundwater monitoring, ground cover requirements, and restrictions on wintertime operations. Vineyard operators and agricultural representatives call the new extra costs and mandates they are facing excessive and overkill. Robin Bartholow of Sonoma County Farm Bureau says small growers would feel the biggest hit because they have small margins. They'd be paying more significant costs because of all this. It's give and take. Big happenings last night in Petaluma, too. There's a mountain lion sighting right near the Kohl's department store. Yeah. Police issued a nixle warning.
What?
They said this mountain lion was spotted wandering around near a Kohl's department store. A number of people reported seeing the mountain lion right after midnight. What are they doing at Kohl's at midnight? That's what I want to know.
What are the other people doing there? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What are you doing at midnight at Kohl's? It's closed. Yeah. But they apparently were near North McDowell Boulevard where this mountain lion was seen. People are advised to call Petaluma Dispatch if they spot this mountain lion that was roaming near the department store. He was shopping for new Pumas.
I see.
What he's got going here is a situation.
Yeah, I guess that is it.
I mean, come on, people. Okay, this next story requires video. So give me half a second because I need to show you the video. This is one of those things that's going viral, and it's a Boston police officer that went onto a slide, like a child slide, and look at this. He goes flying out the other end. Let me see if I can hit the video. Here you go. Here you go. It's coming. There he goes. Woo!
Wow, why would he do that?
Right. He was hurt.
No kidding. I mean, it slides right into concrete. How could he not be hurt?
I mean, stuff is going off of him. And I mean, and if maybe there's more weight behind the officer to propel him down the slide. But if he's hurt, I'm thinking this isn't a good thing for kids either. But yeah, this officer in Boston plunged, catapulted off this playground slide. He went down the slide that's part of a renovated playground, and it's gotten this video millions of views on TikTok. It's attracted crowds of locals checking out the slide. Now people are going to the slide, but yeah, he was hurt. So
Tony, what was that movie? I've mentioned it before. Class Action Park, I think it's called. Class Action Park.
There's actually
Google it.
Yeah. So Class Action. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go on. Sorry, it's gone.
It was, I believe it was in New Jersey, this theme park that had slides like the one you just saw. I mean, it wasn't exactly like that, but this guy who owned Class Action Park, he like on the back of a napkin went, right, I want a slide that goes like this, goes like that, goes like that. They built it with total disregard for whether or not it was safe. And they had like bolts and screws sticking up so that when kids slid down, they had it would just tear apart their body. There were literally so many injuries and so many court cases. That's why they call it Class Action Park. They could put together a class action lawsuit. And in the movie, you have people like Jimmy Kimmel and other celebrities talking about the fact that they used to go there all the time, understanding that they were going to get hurt. I mean, that was almost like part of what the day would be. It would be how you would be hurt.
Obviously, the movie's sensationalized a bit, but there's a great documentary on YouTube by a guy named On Defunctland, it's called, and it's called The History of Action Park. It's really, 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 really good. It's actually the actual stuff that happened there. It's really good.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's called The History of
Action Park. It's from Defunctland. Really good.
Right.
Google it.
All right, cool. I'll grab it. Thank you.
It's really good.
Okay. Are you guys done talking about your class actions park?
Sorry, Kim. We're trying to buy you time. You seem kind of like, let me see if I can get it. I was just trying to give you some time. My God, are you guys done? I can't believe the way she talks to me.
Kim, how are you?
Are you finished?
Oh, my gosh.
The National Park Service wants to remind nature lovers that Friday there will be no entrance fee to enter any national park. Great American Outdoors Act, passed in 2020, provides funding to improve infrastructure and expand recreation opportunities in national parks and other public lands. And Friday is a celebration of the passing of the GAOA. So head to your national park.
That's very cool.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Trevor from Concord gave me some of that. Thank you, Trevor.
It might be time for you to start thinking of New York City as the big green apple. That is because New York consumes more marijuana than any other city in the world.
Wow. I love it. I mean,
Where are my weed smokers at?
I guess they're in New York. Yeah.
The 2023 Cannabis Global Price Index says the city blazes through 62 metric tons of weed every year, 7 tons more than Sydney, Australia, which came in second. The index says Tokyo has the most expensive cannabis in the world, almost 3 times as expensive as it is in New York. Portland, Oregon has the cheapest weed in the U.S. Montreal, the least expensive worldwide. So
Stay at home and get baked.
Yeah.
you're going to go, you're going to buy your pot. There's a little
Well, you
price
got to.
index
So
for
you're
you.
saying you need to buy your pot in Oregon if you're looking
Yeah.
for value, right?
That's right. If you're looking for the cheap stuff,
yeah.
you got to
Has
go to
anybody been a
Oregon.
weed?
Yeah. There you go.
Unfortunately, this is the best picture I could find of this last story involving the roller coaster capital of the world, which is Ohio's Cedar Point. They have announced a record-breaking roller coaster with speeds of up to 128 miles an hour.
Wow.
No.
Yeah, indeed. That's exactly right. It's called Top Thrill 2. Okay? It'll be the boldest, most advanced roller coaster Cedar Point has ever introduced and the tallest and fastest in the world.
Wow.
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
I know. I have you ever seen
We've
anything?
never seen anything like it before.
I don't think so. It sounds pretty incredible.
Top Thrill 2.
I'd say
is-
almost there's never been anything like it. When you say,
There's never been anything like this.
okay, there you go. That's for
It's-
Jefferson Graham. Okay,
It's
go ahead.
debuting next year, Top Thrill 2. Coming next year, the original Top Thrill Dragster closed in 2021. So now we get the Top Thrill 2. 128 miles per hour? I mean, what if it shoots off the tracks? This is crazy. Crazy.
It's a little much. I agree with Kim on this. Yeah. But there are people who love that thrill, you know. And so it's
Well,
yeah. Okay.
enjoy. The Mark Thompson Show is crowdfunded, which means we do rely on you for support. You can find us at themarkthompsonshow.com. The Patreon link, the PayPal link is there. And of course, here on the show, the Super Chat is live. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
No.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
Yeah, what up, everybody? It's a fun day. It's a big day. We are, I guess, hours away from the former president, Donald Trump, being arraigned in court in D.C. You've no doubt seen the wall-to-wall coverage. They have a lot of Secret Service people in place. They have federal officers in place. They have D.C. cops in place. What is it, Tony? There's some problem?
Oh, I found 30 seconds of what the ride will look like. It looks insane.
Oh, the 120-mile-an-hour ride? Okay, here it is.
It's nuts. I muted it so we don't have to worry about music.
All right,
But
here's the here's a look.
It launches you out first, and it goes up, then backwards.
74 miles an hour.
Yeah.
they say, the launch.
No, it gets better.
The second launch is 101 miles an hour, they say. Yeah.
And then it's
The
up and
third
over
is
the hump.
120 miles an hour.
No.
God, this
Actually,
just
I
looks-
kind of want to. It's
Oh,
similar
God.
what's at Knott's Berry Farm out here.
It's made for you. It's made for guys like Tony, the thrill seekers, the gamers, you kids. You love that. I'm back in the restaurant with keeping my eye on everybody's
I don't
stuff.
know if I could survive this one, honestly.
Yeah,
There's a
This
reason
one might
that
do
this
some
place is
damage.
fun.
yeah. I think it's. I don't know.
That's
Anyway.
a theme park accident waiting to happen. Is what that
Well,
is.
when they have an accident on that, it's going to be serious. It's going to
yeah.
be
Well,
bad.
That's right.
actually, there's a reason why. What's the one at Knott's Berry Farm here? Same launch system. It uses compressed air, and that's why they had to close it for a while, and that's why Top Thrill's been closed for a while. So they maybe come up with a new system, but there were some accidents.
Oh, good knowledge.
Something's
Good
happened.
knowledge from Tony with some roller coaster knowledge. That's very strong.
That doesn't instill confidence, Tony. I have to say they had some accidents. Yeah.
Do you want the roller coaster fun or safe? They can't be both.
Pick your
What
poison,
can you tell
people.
us about the scene?
What can you tell us about the scene? Larry, I'll tell you something. I don't know if it's safe, but it sure is fast. All right. Smash the like button like a boss, and let's get rocking here on
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't have time for my law and disorder. We'll put the Trump stuff to the side. We'll get into law and disorder in the 11 o'clock hour. I was in the 12 o'clock hour within the second hour with David Katz, the renowned federal prosecutor, and we're so glad that he'll spend some time with us just after 11. Now, I want to get to our pal. He's just gotten back after a hiatus. I think he's been away for almost a month. How about it for the great Jefferson Graham, everyone?
Yay.
Yeah.
Just came back from Sandusky, Ohio.
Yeah. Wow.
Just kidding. I've been to Sandusky. How about you guys? Have you been there?
Well, you know, none of us have been to Sandusky. That's not fair. Okay. Have you, Kim? Maybe. No, the only person who might have been would be Tony. Tony, have you been? I don't think so.
No. The only places I've been is Italy and Canada outside of California, honestly.
Okay. I was given an assignment
Thanks, Tony.
Back in my USA Today days to go across the country and go on, believe it was 10 roller coasters in a week. And it was actually, we ended up doing 10 coasters a day.
Oh my God.
Over a week. It was brutal, and the most intense coasters in the world, Sandusky, Ohio.
That's the point.
No,
I love that
you
you know that. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, no.
I was, you know, when you're on local news, they send you to all of these places where there's a new ride, so every time there was something new, at Disneyland, for example, the Indiana Jones ride, I was there, and we did a live remote, all this sort of thing. So I was sent to Great America. Is that what it's called, Tony? Outside of Los Angeles? Yeah. Santa Clara, okay. And they had a new ride called the Riddler, I think it was called, and it was anyway, it's supposed to, be all these things: fastest, most intense, scariest, whatever. So I did the live remote, and then when we were done, the guy there, the manager of the park, I guess, he said, "Do you want to ride the ride?" And do you? I said, "Well, I'm not really much." He said, "Well, you can ride any ride in the park, and we're still, even though the public has left, we're still going to remain open. We're cleaning stuff up, wrapping stuff up. So anywhere you want to go for the next hour." I was there with my girlfriend at the time, so she went on the ride. I sat next to her. I was about to go on, and then at the last second, I jumped out because I'm not a roller coaster guy. And she came out, and she was just like, there was like a white pallor to her. She said, "It's scary." And we didn't go on any other rides after that. I mean, you got to have a certain, I think, aspect to who you are and the thrill you like and that scare to really enjoy it. I mean, clearly it's incredibly popular, so I feel like I'm an exception. But when you're talking about 10 roller coasters in a day, that sounds like its own circle of hell to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first two weren't too bad. Right. It was a lot of 7-Up. It was a lot of 7-Up every time I got off. Now, my son was 10 years old at the time, and we were doing them together, and so he was loving every minute of it. A classic wooden coaster is really cool, but these ones are out of hand. So I will not be going.
I don't know why I get a comment like this, Tony. Maybe you can explain. That's the Mark. Honestly, you're a bit scattered. What is that supposed to mean, Matt? I'm riding herd over a lot of stuff. How dare you? I ought to put Matt in timeout. I won't do it, but I ought to. Jefferson Graham, welcome back. You were in South Dakota, among other places, I think. And I wonder if you can, before we get to some of the new, you're here, it's Tech Thursday, and you were the longtime writer for USA Today. We'll get to some of that. But give us a snapshot of South Dakota. It's a great trip. That's where Mount Rushmore is, right?
That's where Mount Rushmore is. I was on a 30-day trip across the West and a little bit of Midwest. South Dakota acts like the West, but it's in the Midwest. 500,000 motorcycle enthusiasts will embark upon South Dakota this weekend for 10 days to visit Sturgis for the motorcycle rally. I was a little early for that, but this is a state with 900,000 people. So 500,000 motorcycle enthusiasts are going to go there. South Dakota is one of the great undiscovered gems, the Black Hills, the Badlands National Park, Mount Rushmore. But what I really liked about Mount Rushmore was visiting and then going to the Native Americans' response to Mount Rushmore, which is called Crazy Horse, where you learn the real history about the sacred land that was stolen from them to create this thing by a KKK enthusiast who also did Stone Mountain in Georgia. So you learn a lot of stuff. The area is beautiful. I saw bison, I saw deer, I saw all sorts of stuff, and I've got my first full-length episode, photo walks from this road trip, running this weekend at photowalkstv.com and on YouTube. So please check it out.
I'm sure you got some great stuff. I was there a few years ago, and they literally are still working on that, the monument, the Native American monument that you talk about that's not so far. So you can, while you're there, hear or see the blasts that are creating the sculpture that they're building out of the mountainside, right?
Yeah, so they'll be working on this for decades. It's sort of like that church in Barcelona that will never be done. But the exhibit inside that tells the history, you'll learn a lot about what happened, and you learn the real history, which you're not going to learn at Mount Rushmore. Now, Mount Rushmore was amazing. It was quite a sight, and it was fun to go to. I think the alternate history was probably more fun.
Oh well, I mean, it's a great. If you can get into a bookstore, I remember I was in a bookstore for a couple of hours just literally reading about, and I think I still have the book somewhere, the Lakota peoples and what happened to them. And as you say, the West that was settled, whenever you see we've settled the West, there were people there already, and it wasn't pretty what happened to them. There it is, though. That's if you're watching on YouTube, that's the monument that we're talking about, the Crazy Horse Monument, right? How far is it from Mount Rushmore? It's not far.
Oh, it's less than 20 minutes.
Yeah. And so you can see, and they'll show you there, and I'm sure that, the thing about Jefferson Graham is he'll have that in his Photo Walks TV show. You'll see what it's supposed to look like eventually. As Jeff says, they're going to go on with this for years. But it's a really, really cool part of trying to preserve and bring attention to the history of the Native peoples. The other thing is a natural geological, what would you call that? The thing that was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
That's in Wyoming. That's Devil's Tower.
Yes, Devil's Tower. You're right. It's in Wyoming. I guess.
That's nearby. I mean, it's on the border. If you were to go to Sturgis or Deadwood is an old Western town that somebody like Mark would be in heaven. It's a lot of gambling and it's a lot of casinos, and but it looks like it's from 1870 and hasn't changed. Now this Devil's Tower is probably 15 minutes from there. So
cool.
Good time for all.
All right, now let's get to some tech stuff.
First, I want to tell you my biggest tech issue that I had while I was on this trip,
Please.
Which is so many places I had no signal. And, we don't understand that when we live in the big cities. But, I mean, we're talking hours and hours and hours with no signal. And then how am I going to get around? Even if we had the maps, we still didn't know where we were going. We still couldn't figure out. And T-Mobile, who's my cell phone provider, this happens every time I go away. 2 weeks into the trip, you generally get, you have used all your room. You get 5 gigs a month, and you've used it all. So right now, you'll still get service, but we're going to throttle you. We're going to throttle you, and it won't be very fast. And what they really did is they'd let me use it in the morning, and then usually by 10 or 11, nothing. And there was no thing that says, pay $20 and you get more service.
Sure, usually they'll give you a chance to buy some kind of additional upgrade. They didn't offer that to you.
No, it was very frustrating. But wow. My clock has turned now, and I'm back in. And you use here at my desk, I hardly use it at all. But when I'm out on the road, you're using it all day long. You need those directions and those restaurant menus, and a lot of places will only let you book appointments, reservations online, and you're stuck. So anyway.
That's a really great travel note, because there are a lot of these areas. I want to get into the West, like I've talked to you about this countless times, Bryce Canyon and all these places in the West where I still have never been. And I keep, Courtney wants to go to Europe and stuff. I want to go here in this country. There's so much great stuff in this country. But some of these places are fairly desolate and there is no way to get a signal.
Yeah, most of the places that you're mentioning have no signal. Bryce has no signal. Zion has no signal. Moab, the Arches National Park had no signal.
And there's literally nothing you can do. I mean,
there's nothing you can do. Every state we went to, it got different. The country is 50 different shades of color. It's unbelievable when you're in the car and you go from California to Arizona, and then the ground starts turning red, and then you go into Colorado and it's green as hell. It's unbelievable. I never saw such greenery. So every state was different, and it was really amazing to see. If people have the time to take the time for a road trip, it's definitely worth it, because you will see a lot, and in the air you'll see nothing.
Tell me about this new wireless TV that, the OLED TV. I mean, this is an insane price tag.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, what's worse than putting your TV on the wall and seeing all these ugly wires dangling from it? I mean, that's really a horrible thing. So LG wants to have an answer to that, where there'll be one wire, and it goes into the power cord. And then all the other, your HDMIs and your streaming devices and things like that, will go into a separate box. I think it's a great idea. I just don't want to pay $35,000 for it. How about you, Mark?
What? It's $35,000
for a 97-inch. Now, this set is going on sale.
That's a big TV. Come on.
This is going on sale in the UK this week. LG says it's coming soon to North America later this year. The other models, that was for a 97-inch, but you can get a 77-inch for $7,600.
Well, I mean,
that,
I don't,
or hire an electrician and say, build me a little hole.
I love it.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
That's what we do. We just have an installer. We really do. And it's seamless. It looks great. Tell me about Google's AI search. I guess they've added video.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
AI.
So, I remember we talked about how Microsoft had won the AI wars by putting ChatGPT into Bing. And that was a nice fantasy. At this point, we're still using Google every day. We just really are. We're not going to Microsoft Bing, and we're not going to go to Microsoft Bing. We're going to continue with Google. So Google is doing AI stuff every day and adding more features and making it more talkative. And now they're adding video clips. I don't think it's a big deal. But I think the overall story is that Google is not letting their crown be dethroned. How about you, Mark? You don't go to Bing, do you?
No, of course not. In fact, Bing annoys me. But that is just because I think I'm used to the Google platform. I use DuckDuckGo, though, but again, essentially my search is all Google. I mean, being funneled into Google.
Well, not really, because if you're using DuckDuckGo, then you're using Bing search.
Oh, why? Bing has DuckDuck? That's the same thing, yeah. Bing and DuckDuckGo? Oh, yeah. I didn't know that. So I guess I'm on Bing. Why doesn't it have any kind of Bing marking or... there's no branding associated with Bing on DuckDuckGo. No,
right? They buy the search from Bing, Microsoft, as does Yahoo.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I guess I don't get the newsletter anymore.
Okay, yeah. We're gonna fill you in. You want to talk about funny sunglasses?
Well, the Ray-Ban video glasses, the Facebook. They were supposed to be the rage, right? Everybody was going to be wearing them.
Well, no? I didn't think they were going to be the rage, but there have been so many people who said that we will be reading our phones this way and checking everything in our glasses. And I said, I don't get that. I don't see it. And so Apple's going to come out with their headset next year. I don't think it's going to be a smash, and certainly this Facebook glasses is not a smash. In fact, only 10% of the people who bought them, according to a study, actually use them, actually turn them on. And that's after paying a bad $300. Yeah. That's after paying $300. Yeah.
Well, I I have the Oculus, and I got a pair for myself and a pair for Courtney because I was feeling spendy at that moment. This is a couple of years ago. And
I can only imagine where they are today.
Hers has never been opened, okay? Mine, I opened, but it was just, I just didn't, I didn't find So in other words, I guess I understand this thing where you get it, you're excited about a technology, and then you never really get into it.
Well, the thing about the Oculus is I do think it's cool. I do think for playing games, it's cool. I think for walking down the street with glasses and, photographing people and doing all sorts of things, that's a different story. Here's what I would say about Oculus, and this is really one of the reasons I got it. I got it for any kind of tennis game that I could play on there, but I couldn't find one. But maybe I just wasn't looking in the right places. I don't know how to do the search code, but I'll tell you what it's really good for, and this involves you, Jefferson Graham. I want to experience many of these places that I've never been or may never go, and I want the immersive experience. I want to go to Zion, to Bryce, to South Dakota, to Wyoming, to Europe, to Asia, etc. But I may never get the chance. I want that immersive experience. I think it's terrific. And so for that, I see it particularly having an advantage. Yeah, well, Facebook gave me that demo 4 or 5 years ago, and it was great. But who's using it, right?
Yeah,
who's doing it? It's a great idea. It's a great idea. And on this Apple thing, that's a great idea. I'm not ready to spend $3,500 for a device that I'm tethered to. I don't know about you. That's the Apple device.
They don't, right? The one that you talked about. I think you mentioned it last time you were with us. Pretty wild. So everything's kind of on the expensive side. Are there any good values out there in tech right now? Do you like it? You told me once that you shouldn't trade your phone in for an upgrade. I told you I'd done it in the summer. You said, "I'll never do that. That's like it's a rookie mistake." Okay.
Never.
When do you turn your phone in the fall?
Not until after September 25th.
Okay.
The folks who don't follow the calendar, they should remember that Apple will have a new phone in September that they will announce right after Labor Day, and they will say it's the thinnest, smallest, biggest, lightest, most powerful, most incredible phone you've ever seen in your life. And it'll be out in 2 weeks, and put in your pre-orders now. And that's that phone, the iPhone 15. And then when it goes on sale 2 weeks later, the 14 and the 13 will have their price shelved by $100 a piece. And that is if you want to buy last year's phone, that's when to buy it. If your phone is messed up and you're thinking about getting a new one, do not get it now. If you close your eyes, September will be here very quickly.
Jefferson Graham, love it. PhotoWalks TV. Find it on YouTube. Subscribe and watch. And you can read his PhotoWalks TV newsletter as well. It's all right there. We have links to it
Next
in
up
our
on PhotoWalks
description.
TV, photographing
the trailer.
All right.
Yeah, you can play it. The music's cleared. You can play it if you want.
Up on PhotoWalks
That's
TV,
That's me on the guitar,
photographing
folks.
and visiting the great and underrated state of South Dakota, where there's so much more than just Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, that is what everybody knows about that part. It's when they get here, often my guests just don't realize how much we have here.
Yeah, these are all the shots for those listening to the podcast. Very cool pictures, of course, because that's his world. Jeff's world is photos. Really cool pictures of wildlife and characters in South Dakota. There's Badlands.
The full-length episode at youtube.com/PhotoWalksTV.
Very nice.
Mark, thanks for showing that, and be sure to come to South Dakota with me sometime.
I'd love it. Love to go anywhere with you. All right, Jeff, thank you so much, my friend. PhotoWalks TV. See you next time. Jefferson Graham, everybody. Love it, love it, love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, we've got David Katz coming on shortly. Here is a shot of the former president's plane. He is going to be getting off that plane. He'll get into he was staying at Bedminster, his golf course. Did you see that? He should be coming off here any second, Tony, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, and
there's never been anything like this.
All right, well, anyway, nice shot of his plane, though. Very nice. Yeah, that's a. There he is. All right. Yeah, with his signature look, who could, who could mistake that frown for anything but excitement? He is. He's bringing his Trumpian walk and attitude. You know what I mean?
Don't talk to me that way.
Well, he's just a kind of a. It's a thing. I will say this, and this I will save a little bit for the days to come, and we'll talk way more about this tomorrow. But with Michael Shore and Jim Avila, he has folded his appearance in court into his ongoing campaign.
Yeah.
And so when you are looking for the thing that's going to knock him off stride, this is very much playing to his base, playing to him being the victim, the aggrieved party, that somehow this weaponized Justice Department take him down, even though the evidence is damning. We'll talk to David Katz about that, but when you talk about fundraising and support, even poll numbers, you've got to concede Donald Trump plays these notes very effectively, the notes of the aggrieved party. So, smash the like button like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod. David Katz next after Kim's News. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Not a picture from today, but a picture of former President Trump traveling around. He is, as we just saw him getting off of a plane, arriving in Washington, D.C. for his court appearance today. He departed New Jersey, heading for D.C. He is set to respond to charges filed against him in connection to alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. A federal grand jury handed up an indictment against Trump on Tuesday. He faces 4 counts, including conspiracy to defraud the United States. He claims the charges are an attempt by President Biden to interfere with the upcoming presidential election. It is the second time that Trump has been facing a federal indictment this year, along with another indictment in the state of New York. A former attorney general, who served under Donald Trump, says evidence presented by the Justice Department in the indictment is likely just the tip of the iceberg, and there is expected to be a lot more coming. In an interview with CNN, Bill Barr said he believes the former president knew that he lost the 2020 presidential election, and a major part of the case hinges on whether Trump knew that he was making false claims or not. Independent Senator Kristen Sinema slamming the Senate Majority Leader for spending more than $130 million in New York to help handle the recent influx of migrants there. In contrast, Arizona is getting about $70 million from the congressional program meant to help cities deal with the migrant surge. The Arizona lawmaker blasting Chuck Schumer, saying the money was only being diverted because he is the leader of the Senate and is from New York. Sinema says she is livid that much money is going to New York that has folks showing up in the shelters, while Arizona has migrants wandering the streets of their small towns. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is warning of global food insecurity caused by Russia's war in Ukraine. In remarks before the United Nations, Blinken called out Moscow for pulling out of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which allowed Ukrainian exports of grain to continue. He said Russia's weaponization of food harms millions of vulnerable people around the world. And this is the second death now being linked to Texas's so-called floating border wall. We've talked about it here on the Mark Thompson Show in the past. There was a body found about 3 miles away from the chain of buoys bobbing in the Rio Grande. Wednesday, a person's body was found attached to the giant plastic balls there, sadly.
Jeez.
Yeah. And here in the Bay Area, Toyota has secured the naming rights for another music venue in Northern California. It was formerly known as the Concord Pavilion, but the venue has been renamed the Toyota Pavilion. So take the whole Concord thing out of it. A new name is sponsored by the local Northern California Toyota Dealers Association.
Oh, that's good. Then they named it correctly then. Okay.
The Toyota Pavilion is set to host artists like Sting, Snoop Dogg, Beck, and many more for the remainder of this year. It opened in 1975. It is approaching its 50th anniversary in 2025. Welcome the Toyota Pavilion.
Wow.
Toyota.
Applause for the Toyota Pavilion.
Yes. This report is sponsored by viewers like you. We rely on you to support. You can find us at themarkthompsonshow.com. That is themarkthompsonshow.com. And that is where you'll find the Patreon links and the PayPal links. And also the super sticker feature is live here on YouTube. And we thank you. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, I am right here for you. You want to sting me in some kind way? That'd be nice. Thank you.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
I know. I have production elements. That's all I'm saying. Thank you very much, everybody. I do want to read a kind of cool note that I got. You know, we have I don't know. I've got everything's all different because I've had to kind of throw stuff together here. Yeah. A note that I got because the people at Coachella Valley Coffee are now sponsoring adjacencies to Kim's News, and through the month, here and there. And I've spoken about Coachella Valley Coffee before. I'm so proud that they're on the show because they legitimately make the best coffee that I've ever had. And I've told you before, I have an espresso machine that is thousands of dollars. And it's like a Ferrari. I have to have like special guys with accents and those white smocks come and, do the maintenance on it. I have 3 burr grinders, so I know coffee, and I do French, or we had today, French press and espresso in this house. So I take in a lot of coffee, but my point is simply that I've tasted a lot of coffee. So that when I say Coachella Valley Coffee is the best coffee I've tasted, it's something. And they hand roast all of their product. So I got a note, and then I want to get to David Katz, and this is an email.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
This is a positive letter, Mr. Former President. Robin says, "Hey, Mark, got my first order from Coachella Valley Coffee. Can't wait to try it. I'm at my coffee limit for the day, but I'm going for an extra cappuccino right now because I just can't wait until tomorrow morning. Hope I can sleep tonight. I love your super special high-performance espresso machine and burr grinders, but I'm too lazy for that. I use the Jura automatic machine that has an automatic bean grinder and frother, and it even cleans itself. Wow.
I like that.
Wild idea, but it just might work.
I got to say, I like that too.
Yeah.
How's that for lazy, Robin says. It's an indulgence that I use and enjoy every single day. Love the show. Nice. And cheers. And that's great. Yeah. So here's the last thing, and then I want to move on. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And when you check out, use this code MARKT, and you'll get 10% off anything on the site. And there are all kinds of different coffees, as I mentioned to you. I like the Ocotillo Espresso. I also like the Sunrise blend. And I'll even write down some other blends that I particularly like. There are different notes, tasting notes that each coffee has. So I really think you'll be happy. I know you'll be happy. And so I would get like a 2-pound bag. I get 5-pound bags. I'm just really a big fan. And so I'm so proud to have them on the show. Again, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Use the discount code MARKT for 10% off. What's that, Kim?
Can I ask? I don't want to interrupt David Katz time because I've been waiting for him all week. But when you make espresso, and you get the Ocotillo espresso, do you make it in the same way you make coffee, or is espresso made in a different way?
Well, espresso should have a finer grind to it. It's almost a powder, like a baby powder grind to it. Mm-hmm. So that's the difference. But you can use Ocotillo espresso and any espresso beans for French press or drip coffee. I mean, in other words, you can use it for all those things. But if you want espresso, the grind should be very fine. That's why I have different grinders, because I just don't like messing with the grind all the time. But that is that's the way you got it. I'm very demanding with my coffee, as you might imagine. All right, that's moving on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
From coffee to the law. This guy is the former federal prosecutor You can hear him and see him in media worldwide. As I've told you, if you're driving around London during morning drive, they have him on these morning shows to talk about American jurisprudence and what's happening with Donald Trump and the law. You can also find him on Fox News Channel. And what's that? Would
you call him a global sensation?
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would call him a global sensation. Jurisprudence, ding word. Okay. How about it for David Katz, everybody? Hi, David. Thank you for being here. Does David hear us? Can you hear us? Do you hear us? Is he muted? What's the story, Tony?
Uh-oh. Can't hear him.
No? We don't
Yeah,
hear
we're getting no audio from you, David. Give me 1 second.
Thanks, Tony.
He looks great, though. I have to say, this shot may be the best shot we've ever had.
I think so.
But he can't be heard. David, can you count to 10 for us? No, we don't hear him.
But he can hear us. He
hears us, but we don't hear him. So this is going to be very tough to play kind of a charades game with him with these complicated legal issues.
All right, David, just leave and come back because it might just be a mic setting that just didn't take. There we go. So now it's muted. Try now talking? No.
It's
not pulling the right audio, so.
Do you want to call him, Tony, or do you want to?
Have him call me.
Okay. If you want to, can you call him maybe? I don't know if he has your number handy. But anyway.
Thanks, I'll call him right now.
All right, good. We'll get him settled here. One of the big things about, I was mentioning it before the break, before the news, one of the big things about this entire arraignment is that it plays into Trump. This is the political side. We're going to talk to David about the real legalities associated with it. But it plays into Trump's victimization and, the state's out to get me. This is the deep state. Yet, if you look at testimony and if you look at the charging documents, you see that it's all Republicans. It's all Trump appointees. It's all his people who are involved in this. In other words, the constellation of facts that goes into this indictment, that's put together really on the testimony and with the help and with the depositions and with the subpoenas that were delivered to those closest to Donald Trump, not the least of whom is Mike Pence. There was a Christmas call, and we're watching the David Katz thing, so as soon as David's ready,
Merry
just bring him back
Christmas!
up. So Trump calls Pence on Christmas Day. Christmas is a big deal to Mike Pence. He's a born-again Christian or, devout Christian. He's a, really extreme Christian kind of. He puts the C in Christian. And so, Donald Trump does this thing where he calls him and he says, Merry Christmas. And it's like, and then right to a discussion about the electors and about the coming certification, if you will, that Trump is expecting Pence to push back on. What's expected of Pence, in effect, on January 6th. So that call and Mike Pence's testimony might be the most relevant part of this entire thing. In Mike Pence and in the back and forth, because Pence did push back, you had what I mentioned to you yesterday. You had the comment on the part of Donald Trump that was, "You're too honest." When asked to do something, it reflected, obviously, in Trump's case, a knowledge that he hadn't actually won the election. I mean, there are other examples of this, but this one exchange is a linchpin, it would seem, to this case nailing Trump. It's an odd fact that this guy Pence, who was basically a lapdog to Trump, I mean, he was the most supplicative, completely bent over all the time, a good soldier to Trump, that his deposition and his testimony might nail Trump is a bizarre irony, I think, to it all.
Did you hear now that Pence is going to sell Too Honest merch to raise money for his 2024 campaign? Yeah,
wow.
You'll be able to get like a Too Honest t-shirt, Too Honest whatever, sweatshirt.
Oh, that's wild. That's
wild.
Gotta
get your merch,
Yeah, he was spineless during the administration, of course.
T-shirts and hats that read "Too Honest," which is a nod to the indictment. Indictment merch.
I love it. Hey, it's a wild idea.
But it just might work.
If Pence takes the stand, it means that Donna will have to take the stand, as they were the only two in the room. That's true. That's how we know that Trump was aware of the realities in the election when he makes that comment, right? So we know that it was Pence who offered that in deposition. So how are we doing, Tony? We're getting close on David Katz. I wanted to point to what will be the linchpin on the Trump side of things. It will be claims of First Amendment rights, that Trump can say what he wants. He can even lie if he wants to, because he's protected by the First Amendment. What's the story, Tony?
He should be good.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
David, what about that First Amendment defense that Trump is clearly going to launch? I've heard it actually floated by his attorneys, and it's been written about extensively. Give me your take on that, please.
Well, first, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Great. Well, the First Amendment defense is ridiculous here because it's the actions that he took. And of course, words can lead to actions. And you don't have a First Amendment right to conspire with someone to rob a bank. And you don't have a First Amendment right to say, put your hands in the air and give me the money. You don't have the right to say, invest in this oil well when you know the oil well is not producing any oil. When people have told you the oil well is completely busted, there's no oil in it, and you sell investments in the oil well to little old ladies by asking them, invest in this thing, it's great. That's not your First Amendment right. When you think about it, most crimes are committed with words. You could call them all First Amendment, from frauds to robberies, stick your hands in the air. And so this is really a ridiculous argument. And it's also not political speech because you can say anything you want to on the street corner. But it's very different when you're the president and you've been advised by your own top lawyers that they've tried everything, they've looked at everything, and there are no frauds out there that would change the election, what the special counsel calls outcome determinative. So none of these states had fraud that would have changed the result. And remember, he hadn't lost one or two. He'd lost Georgia fairly closely. He'd lost another state, I think Wisconsin, fairly closely. But he'd lost overwhelmingly in Michigan and Pennsylvania, and he tried to monkey with the results in those states too. And that, of course, brings us to the phony slates. Now, the phony slates might have been not been that bad if it had been made clear that, look, these are alternate slates in case we win litigation. And if we win litigation and then there's an issue of, okay, which is the slate? In other words, you won the litigation, the Biden slates are invalidated. Where are your slates? If it was absolutely clear that these were the ones who would just jump into force in that event and the documents had made it clear, but the documents actually expressed the idea that these were legitimate slates, and yet these slates had not been approved even by the Republican legislatures. They wouldn't go that far. No Republican governor in a swing state would go that far as to certify any of these slates. So when the deadline came, they just self-certified, and they did some really, suspicious things like hide in the bathroom overnight. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, they could walk out of the bathrooms in a state house and all vote that they were the slate. They did things that are obviously criminal. And that's why 16, I think, older folks actually, first age that you commit a crime is not normally 81. But this is the oldsters in Michigan who got charged criminally up there in state court with being basically a fake slate and knowing that they were signing on to be a fake slate.
Does by the way, just speaking to the fact that Trump will arrive about 40 minutes from now, it's funny, all these cops are there and there are all of these barriers up and everything, and there really hasn't been this big show of support for him on the part of the public. There is a pretty big crowd gathering that is pro-indictment, demonstrators who I guess we just call them pro-indictment demonstrators there on the National Mall right now. You've been so good, David Katz, at giving us a forecast on and timelines on these trials. This one will have what kind of timeline associated with it?
Well, I love all your commenters, and they're almost unstintingly flattering. And thank you very much for the feedback and all of that. I do have a few people who say it's so enlightening and so depressing to have your commentary. So I think they're going to be a little bit depressed, because I don't think this case is going to get to trial before November 2024.
Wow.
And I know that that's controversial, because the idea is that there's a judge who'll stay on top of it and who was appointed by Obama, in this case, in Washington, D.C. And of course, you don't have other defendants who are going to have their own schedules accommodated. And you also don't have national security documents as such. So there won't be that whole clearance level. But here's what I think the narrative is going to be. And I think it'll be in the court of public opinion. And I think it will actually end up being accepted by the judiciary. And I say this with all due respect to the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, but we were always worried that the chickens were going to come home to roost, that he sat on his behind. And he did sit on his behind. And a lot of the stuff that's in this indictment, Mark, was known from January 2021 on. There's really not a lot of revelations that were unearthed by the January 6th committee. And a lot of the revelations that were unearthed by the January 6th committee, which did a fantastic job, are not in this indictment. The Chrissy Hutchinson thing, grabbing the wheel, wanting to go to the Capitol himself by Trump, even the whole insurrection, the sitting there for 3.5 hours and not tamping it down, is not in this indictment. So the argument's going to be that before the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, could even decide whether a special counsel was warranted in this case, whether there was criminality enough to appoint a special counsel, it took him over 2 years. And Merrick Garland's lack of diligence, delay, is not an emergency for the defendant and for the courts. It took him 2 years to evaluate this case, and I need 1.5 years, Trump will say, in order to evaluate my defense, to bring my motions, to do all of these things. And I think that time is on the side of Trump on this one. Now, I also think he'll be the nominee, and I think he'll be defeated. And so I don't think that his ultimate strategy, which is to delay this after November like everything else, and then to pardon himself, or to have an ally pardon him, or to have the Attorney General, who would be new, told not to pursue the case any further. I don't think that will ultimately be successful, but it will be like the force of gravity with which Trump and his allies will pursue that delay of this case too.
Well, I love hearing you. I hate the fact that the prediction you're making, but I love hearing you hit Garland, because I've been hitting him since the very beginning. I just cannot believe this has taken so long, and it's what really makes me lose faith in the institutions of justice. You realize how they're all in on it, I feel like. It's like, I'm not saying that Jack Smith is part of some machine and conspiracy that's in on it, but I mean the institutions of Washington, where they protect each other and they bring charges and slow walk them, and in the end they pardon. I just, it sickens me, honestly. It really does. I mean, here's a guy who was involved in a coup. Isn't that what this is, David?
Well, this is a president who refused to leave office, who preferred to have a coup and deaths at the Capitol, anything not to give up power, an utter egotist, a total narcissist. Having said that, those charges are not in there. They're really not. And, I've heard some of the commentators say, oh, it was so cleverly done and it was such a brilliant work and all this kind of stuff. And just as a legal product, yes, it was well put together. But I think one thing that's being missed in all this is that unless you charge something, you're very unlikely to be able to prove it in federal court, Mark. You're going to get the argument that it's more prejudicial than probative. And there's a rule that keeps out prejudicial evidence. So if they want to talk during the trial at all about him not tamping it down for 3.5 hours, but just sitting at the White House and reveling in it and hoping it would succeed to keep him in power when he was the loser, I think that will be excluded by the judge, and properly. I think that if they want to get into the Chrissy Hutchinson and driving over there, that will be excluded. I think the famous bombshell where he says, wait, those are my people. If they're bringing guns, it's not to do me harm. Don't make them go through the magnetometer knowing his people are bringing guns. I think that's going to all be excluded. And so to focus on this very process type crime, these 3 different conspiracies, they're confusing. I don't think that they move the needle that much. They delight the people who want to see him indicted. And I'm one of them. I think he deserves to be indicted 2 years ago. And I think he deserves to be indicted for the insurrection and for inciting it. They say the First Amendment, the Brandenburg case. To me, this is very distinguishable from the Brandenburg cases, which tend to be the lonely orator, okay, who says a lot of stupid things. And, what's the real incitement? Here, the incitement was so real. It was so concrete. The way that he had not only himself speak, but Giuliani, the way that he used the word peacefully, which was so obviously a fake out. The man who wants to create a huge conflagration, a huge assault, of course, is going to use the word peacefully. That's an old rhetorical trick, which actually is against Trump, to give an inflammatory, violent speech and to use the word peacefully once. They say on Fox and all of these right-wing channels that helps him. No, it doesn't. We all know, right? When somebody says, honestly, start listening and say, okay, what's the thought here? Let me honestly tell you how great the oil well is going to come in. Right? Hold your wallet close.
Yes, probative is a ding word. I think there are a couple other ding words in there. That's the only one I remember. I did want to just review, though, just to underscore what you just said. You're saying prejudicial stuff will be carved out and not admitted. Probative stuff, that's why you made that distinction. Some of this stuff is prejudicial as opposed to shedding light on stuff. Isn't that's the distinction you're making, correct?
What they're saying is that without the commentators who think this was such a masterful job of drafting and how clever it's going to be in court, are relying on the fact that they're not taking the risk that Trump would be acquitted or have a hung jury on the incitement to riot or on the insurrection itself, because they think that there's this constitutional thing, they're saving some motions, they're going to get to trial sooner. No matter how they draft this indictment, Trump is going to turn into a motions machine. He will file motion after motion, everything from challenging the special counsel. He'll move for change of venue. DeSantis's latest brainstorm is it ought to be sent to West Virginia, or they are bringing jurors from hither and yon. All these ridiculous things. But it's certainly worth asking for a change of venue. I suspect that he'll want to change of venue to where he lives, try to bring it down to the Southern District of Florida. That will be denied. But it'll be motion after motion. He'll have this thing that executive privilege. He'll try to bring that up again. These people shouldn't be allowed to have testified against him at all because he had executive privilege. He's also going to argue in motions that he acted on the advice of counsel. But we all know that he had 12 or so distinguished lawyers in the White House telling him, you don't have any prospect of winning this thing. We've tried everything. I mean, Bill Barr tried to carry water for him before Barr finally said to him, there's no major evidence of fraud. And then, of course, he was roundly criticized by Trump. He was basically forced out. Now he's looking for vindication. Bill Barr will never be vindicated in my eyes after what he did with the Mueller report and how he mischaracterized it. And
I made that point earlier, yeah.
Yeah, you did. Good. So, but the point is that to then go find these oddballs like Giuliani, who had no legal reputation at that point at all. I mean, let's face it, if it was the biggest decision of your legal life, okay, something that totally mattered to you, whether you're going to lose your house or not, would you go to Giuliani for his advice and follow Giuliani when 12 distinguished lawyers in that field had told you to do the opposite? So that's frivolous, really, that he relied on Sidney Powell and all that. But he'll bring all of those motions, Mark, notwithstanding.
Well, I want to talk to you, just because you mentioned that in our last couple of minutes, about these unindicted co-conspirators, Giuliani, Eastman, Powell, Clark, Chesborough, and they've suggested that unindicted co-conspirator number 6 is this Boris Epstein or Epstein. I'm curious why no charges were brought against those people. Are those charges in the offing? Why are they named in a doc? We'd heard for a long time, because for a long time, I mean, through the time runs together, but somehow that they were looking for those people who are as so far unindicted to flip. What are the realities concerning the unindicted people who we all, I think, are pretty clear as to what their identities are as far as this document and the charging goes?
Just a footnote, I debated Jeffrey Clark about a month ago on Newsmax. I feel that I won the debate. And of course, they won the debate at the White House when he was about to be put in as the acting attorney general. And Jeffrey Clark was going to be vaulted from like number 6 up to number 1. and it looked like he was going to issue this opinion that there'd been a lot of fraud. And then Trump had the famous line, just issue an opinion that there's been fraud. Just send that letter that the other people at the Department of Justice won't send, and then my Republican congressman will take it from there. And then Jeffrey Clark, they told him that, there's going to be riots in the street. And he said, well, that's what the Insurrection Act is for. All of that is very, very troubling. But I'm not sure that Jeffrey Clark, and I say this, I guess, because, we were in the debate together. But I'm not sure that Jeffrey Clark is really guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of a crime. And I don't see any reason why Jeffrey Clark and the other ones that you named, like Giuliani and Professor Eastman, they figure there's a 50-50 chance that Trump gets back into office. Please don't be horrified, okay? But they feel that way. Why, if you had a 50-50 chance of getting a pardon and having this whole thing be behind you, would you go and inform and become the star witness against Donald Trump? None of them are going to do it. Now, the fact that Mark Meadows does not seem to be one of the 6 people described there may mean that Mark Meadows, who is, he's a swampy guy. He's a Washington insider. He wants to, be, eating at fancy restaurants and living the good life after Trump is long gone. Yeah, he may have made his deal with the special prosecutor, and he may be getting out of this with some kind of immunity deal, Mark Meadows.
Same with Jared Kushner. I'd heard the Jared in that same kind of context that he's not mentioned, and he was clearly very close to the situation, or that was what people were saying.
Who did you say?
Jared Kushner.
Jared Kushner, the $2 billion man. Who knew? Who knew that after the royal family's advisors said, why would you invest $2 billion with this guy, right? What experience does he have? What winning track record of handling investments does he have? Why would you pick this guy? And we assumed that the Saudi prince said, do you know who his father-in-law is, you idiot?
Right, yeah.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's but he's not mentioned because he might have made a deal as well, or you don't think that? That seems like a bridge too far, but maybe.
I don't think that. I think that they wanted to keep, especially with all this pressure about Hunter Biden and Biden's family, I think they wanted to keep the family out of it. You can say that those political considerations don't enter it at all, but you start dragging Trump's family into it, you're just asking for that false equivalency, in my view.
I see.
Although we can talk next week if you want to. It's not a good look that the president was on 20 phone calls with his son and his son's business associates. That's just not a good look. It's nothing compared to the crimes that I believe Trump committed daily. You remember when he was in office, I was on Pat Thurston's show, and we were on 3 times a week, and people kept saying, why don't you say, you're a criminal defense attorney, why don't you stand up for a criminal target and say that Trump didn't do anything wrong? And I said, because he's good for it. Week after week, day after day, he was committing crimes in office. And then this was not the icing on the cake. This was a huge threat to democracy. Nobody should minimize. Everybody shouldn't just go, oh, wow, those things happen. Trump being Trump. Trump almost cost us our precious democracy. It was astonishing how close.
I agree. That's the point I made yesterday. They came very close to actually pulling this off. I love talking to you, and the last question I want to ask you is about lawyers. I was having this conversation this morning. Someone was saying to me, well, they have some badass lawyers at that level in the government, Jack Smith and his team. Yeah, but you know what? I know rich people have badass lawyers too, and this is a new kind of defense that they're mounting where these lawyers are actually being paid. Trump is used to stiffing lawyers. That's kind of the way he's done it and stiffed everybody along the way. But now we've talked about the bills. We've seen $40 million going into the defense fund for both Trump and other defendants who are part of that Trump world. Tell me about how the government lawyers, because you've been one of them, line up against the rich guy lawyers who are defending them. The defendants.
Oh, I think Jack Smith's team, he has a lot of excellent lawyers. And you look at someone like, Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland and I were at the same law firm. And we were very smart and we represented very rich people. And we also wanted to work in the government because it's a great honor to stand up and say, I represent, the United States. I represent the people of this country. It sounds very old fashioned, maybe even jingoistic to some people. But it's a tremendous honor. And, Merrick Garland's family are originally immigrants like mine are. And to come to America and stand up for this country, I mean, it's a fantastic thing. And they have great lawyers. And of course, in terms of being rich people's lawyers, a lot of them stay with the government. But of course, there's a revolving door, as it's called. And a lot of people leave the government after 5 or 6 years, as I did. I was a prosecutor. I don't want to I love being introduced as a former assistant U.S. attorney, but I spent more of my career by now as a criminal defense attorney than I did as an assistant U.S. attorney, and that's normal. Some people don't do so much criminal defense, as I do, even white-collar criminal defense. A lot of them go on to be corporate lawyers because working for the government, you get great trial experience, especially in federal court. That's almost impossible to get in a private law firm. And so it's kind of a training ground for litigators, both civil and criminal. So he's got a great.
So if you were assigning point values to both, you'd say they come in at about the same level. Trump's defense attorneys now, who are being paid, the new ones, high-level guys, and the high-level government attorneys who are there out of pride and out of a sense of service to the country.
During the Kavanaugh hearings, I was also on a show, actually Laura Ingram's show, with John Lauro, who's one of the new attorneys, this John Lauro on this team. And he's a very, very good attorney. And I think that he'll do a good job, but he wants to get paid. And by now they know to get paid up front. They've gotten a little smarter to Trump's game. And so they don't just send a big bill at the end of the month. They demand money up front. Remember the one down in Florida, the $3 million man? He took a $3 million retainer, which cleared before he signed on. And I'm sure that Lauro was paid well. And the other attorneys will be paid well, because this is the one that really matters to Trump. I mean, one thing, fool around in the courts, all the stuff that he does, the king of litigation, the doctor of delay, but Trump does not want to lose this one. And I could be wrong. He could end up being forced to trial in the spring, and he doesn't want to, at least in Washington, D.C. I don't believe down in Florida there's any chance. But in Washington, D.C., who knows? The judge may just put the pedal to the metal. I think that Trump will appeal if he has a firm trial date. I think that, who knows? Maybe the Supreme Court would even back him up on the trial delay. The people who are horrified and say, how would he ever get the votes on the Supreme Court? Well, let's see. He picked 3 of the Supreme Court judges, Alito and Thomas. Does that, 5 out of 9. How could that possibly happen? But he does go to trial. He's in it to win it, as improbable as that may be, or at least to hang it, like Manafort tried to.
Sure.
One juror who won't convict Trump.
We're out of time. Kim, did you have something quickly? Or,
just a really quick question.
Yeah.
The former president is at the courthouse where CNN is reporting he's under arrest, and that this is his 3rd arrest now that we know in 4 months. What's the procedure? Why do they have to formally arrest him? Can you talk a little bit about that before we wrap it up?
Sure. I also did want to mention that I was a law clerk in that courthouse, the 6-story courthouse right there. And my judge used to come in through that parking lot. And so I know that whole security system down there in that courthouse. And I don't think anyone's going to ever see Trump. I think they can bring him in and out. And the only thing that they'll have maybe is a court artist in the courtroom. He has to be arrested. And like I said, this is a teaching moment. You might wonder why in white collar cases, someone like Trump, who's not a flight risk at all, has to be arrested, has to be the equivalent of perp walked. And there was a lot of controversy when Giuliani used to perp walk people, especially white collar defendants. And it was a stunt. And I don't think there should be stunts like that. I don't see why you should have to be arrested. I don't see why you shouldn't be allowed to appear by Zoom or something like that. I think Trump's motive, though, is he wanted to be there. He could have appeared by Zoom. He wants to sort of that martyrdom in Washington, D.C., the deep state grabbed him, but they couldn't hold him. He had his big rally there in Washington, D.C. He's going to take it to the deep state. He wanted the theater of that.
Yeah, I mean, he plays it all. We're saying this as we waited for you, that he plays it all to his advantage. It's an amazing thing, playing the victimization, essentially, of this whole process. David, love our time together. Thank you for being here. I'll look forward to next week as well. And boy, that's a chilling prediction you heard from David Katz today. He believes this case also will not make it to trial in time to be resolved before the next election. So
that's my prediction. And our billionaire overprivileged victim, unbelievable how he plays his part.
Yeah. David Katz, thanks, David. Wow, good stuff.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So, guys, we had some tech problems at getting David on, but excited that we did get him on and we got all our questions answered and even some revelations along the way. I mean, that's a huge revelation that David provided. Thank you, Tony, for getting him on the air with us.
Can I just show one thing real fast? I just got to show one thing because I'm watching all the coverage.
Yeah.
This is Trump's lawyer addressing the media.
Well, there's always one attractive lawyer.
Are you trying to say she's hot? Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm just saying, of course.
Yeah.
That
There is
you just woo.
Yeah, there is always one hot Trump attorney. There always is. It's always a question of who's it going to be. Yeah, but there she is. You know that she's on board now.
And Belinda's in lobby.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is get right to Belinda, Kim. I just don't want to, with the world on fire, wait too long on Belinda. So thank you for that. On Thursdays, we like to look at the planet. We do it in a segment we call It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Oh, you have the open, don't you, Tony? I just played it, but you have it, I think, unless you want me to play it. What do you want, Tony?
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid. No. It's the planet stupid.
And it needs our help. She's Belinda Waymouth, our eco-journalist. Yeah, good morning. And I don't know even where to start. I have record temperatures, deaths of humans and others as a result of these record temperatures worldwide. I've got the death of coral reefs. I've got habitats in free fall. Spin the wheel of disaster and tell me where you'd like to start, Belinda.
Oh, Mark, I am passionate about the planet too, and I am freaked out right now. I mean, this has been such a super intense summer. And, you know, we talked about this before the summer, you know, what was going to happen when the La Nina, which we had, you know, that weather system had been operating for the past several years and had basically been shielding us from the warmth that we, you know, the warmth that we've been putting into the atmosphere. Because, you know, last year was a record greenhouse gas emissions. We're supposed to be going in the other direction, but we're not. And now, you know, La Nina is over. And so that blanketing, you know, that sort of obfuscating of what was happening is done. And now we are in El Nino. And so that's a heating up time. So the Pacific is super hot, but also the Atlantic is really hot. I mean, those temperatures in Florida, 101 degrees, you know, ocean temperature.
And I'm so glad you mentioned it because I see, you know, this isn't just hyperbole on my part. Hyperbole is a ding word. Belinda used a ding word too. I forget what it is. Sorry.
Obfuscating.
Obfuscating. Thank you. That was it. The heat in the Atlantic is such that it's killing off, but I mean at a record pace, killing off, not just endangering, coral. Those coral reefs now, they've had to go to excessive lengths to preserve them or to revive them, meaning they try to get a little bit of reef, I think. You can, oh, here it is, thank you. They try to get a little bit of reef, right, Belinda? And they take it and they literally pull it out of the hot waters of the Atlantic and try to have it reproduce in some kind of controlled environment. Can you speak to that for a moment?
Well, this is so, you know, we've been talking about this for a really long time. What's happening to coral in these super, you know, as the oceans heat up? Because, you know, the ocean is, you know, I keep on saying it, and it's really important for us to know this. You know, it's absorbed 90% of our excess heat, but to its own peril. And so what was happening, first of all, was this coral nursery that you can see in this picture, these are pieces of, you know, elk and I think it's called longhorn or bighorn. And so these citizen scientists and scientists in Florida who are part of these organizations who are trying desperately to save the coral, you know, moved it to cooler parts of the ocean. But now what they're doing is they're getting pieces of coral that are still alive and they're taking it out of the ocean and putting it into tanks on land to save it because the ocean is too hot. And what's really important for people to understand is that when you have a species like a coral that lives in warm equatorial ocean or any species, that species is highly adapted to live in that hot habitat. And they don't have a lot of wiggle room either side to get that much hotter or that much cooler. They're already sort of at their evolutionary maximum by just being able to live in that hot habitat. And the other thing that's happening is that, the ocean is heating up too fast for species to actually be able to adapt to it. So what these people, in Florida are doing, and I mean, they are talking about, this is like looking at an apocalypse. They are beside themselves, to save this coral. But this is a really extreme measure to take it out of the ocean and put it in tanks on land where they're going to conserve it. They're going to, it breeds asexually. So, basically clone it. But where are they going to put it? Because if the ocean doesn't cool down, you can't put it back into a hot ocean. It's not adapted for that. And they were already moving corals away. There's an incredible, huge reef called the Coral Triangle, and I put it on my Twitter feed this morning, and I pinged you, Mark. So the Coral Triangle is in Indonesia, the Solomon Islands, the Philippines, Malaysia, and it's enormous. It covers an area I think twice the size of the US. And scientists there years ago were moving those corals further north and further south to get to cooler oceans. Well, 44% of the ocean is in a marine heat wave right now. I mean, that's getting towards half the ocean, statistically. This is bonkers.
So my question might be, I had the same thought you did, which is when you can rehabilitate this coral in a controlled environment, where do you put it after you've rehabilitated it? You can't put it back into that habitat because that habitat no longer exists in a way that would support that life. And the other point you make, and I just want to revisit it or underscore it for those listening or watching, is that you have some species, I would say humans would be among the species, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that can slowly adapt to a changing planet and changing conditions climatically in that planet. But or in the ecosystem in which they exist. Among those things is not things like coral and all other sea life. They have not the flexibility, if you will, from an evolutionary standpoint to be able to do that. And so, yet that's why you end up with these huge kill-offs and die-offs across wide areas of the oceans and waterways across the world.
Yeah. Well, I told you guys, when I was back from New Zealand, that we've got fish just, coming ashore dead because the ocean is too hot in New Zealand. And they just had that huge beaching of, was it right whales in Australia? And they saw them coming and they tried to get them back into the ocean, and then they just re-beached themselves because these animals are trying to escape an ecosystem that is no longer hospitable to them. And the problem with the ocean, and especially, corals, they are, they're fixed, they're not, they can't swim to cooler waters. But, speaking to your point of how adaptable are we, I mean, look how badly we're doing and all that's in the news about human beings and how we cope with heat waves and how, we go into sort of a toxic shock state in the heat because we can't get rid of the toxins in our bodies. That's, before we get to dehydration and other things. And then ironically, what we're doing right now is because the planet is so hot, Southern Europe, Eastern Asia, tons of the US. What are we doing? We're turning on the air conditioning. What powers the air conditioning? Fossil fuels. So, the cruel irony of that is the thing that's making us hot, we're then using to cool us down because we can't cope with the hot. So we're making it hotter. And, we had that listener, I think her name is Janet, a couple of weeks ago when she'd read about the temperatures of Florida. She messaged you and I, like, what can I do? What can I do? One of the things that people need to understand, and this to me is truly criminal. We are still subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. And I've read, math on it that says, to the tune of $11 million a minute, the fossil fuel industry is being subsidized. That just has to stop. Those are the whales that beach themselves in Australia. And they,
I mean, it's horrifying.
It's awful. It's awful. And then they get on the beach and there are people there waiting to, push them back into the ocean. And then the whales just come ashore again. It's like, no, we're done. We're done.
Well, I mean, it's like pushing. It would be like pushing you back into a burning home. You know what I mean? It's like they're going to die if they stay in that house. And that house, in this case, is the ocean. They're going to die either way, and it's horrifying to see it. What the So you were saying what we can do, though. So that is awful that we subsidize these awful fossil fuel, dirty energy, essentially. So what is your point, that we should put pressure on legislators to stop this subsidizing of those industries?
Yeah. Look, the fossil fuel party needs to be over. This just needs to be done. And what was interesting also this week, and what was really, what they're really talking about in Florida is that, we have to address climate change. Basically yesterday, we have to start getting our emissions down because the consequences are too dire, and we're all feeling it this summer. It's not just what's happening, to the whales and the coral reefs. Human beings are really feeling it, and so this has to be addressed and has to be addressed now. And that article that I sent you, about this report that the Audubon Society just sent out. So they sent it out to their members because bird lovers really hate the human infrastructure that kills their beloved birds. And I completely get it. The collisions with buildings, those are awful, blah, blah, blah. But what a lot of bird lovers are really against is all the infrastructure that's going to be needed for renewable energy so that we can make this transition to renewables. We can, get to 100% renewables by 2035. And, the infrastructure is going to be huge. It's, 10,000 miles per year just of, electric power lines being put up. And
right. I don't mean to interrupt, but just to make the point, they have to connect the alternative energy, the clean energy, to the power grid. That's what you're talking about. So
yeah. So wherever it's being produced. So if it's being produced in Arizona, which is where a lot of solar is going to come from, and it needs to come to California, we have to have a solid, grid to get it there. And what the Audubon Society is saying, because the real purists, say that birders, we don't want renewable energy if it hurts our beloved birds. We don't want it. We don't want more infrastructure. We don't like wind turbines. But, I've cited this, this is peer-reviewed science, that fossil fuel power plants kill 30 times more birds per kilowatt hour than wind turbines. So my point being, we have to get off fossil fuels. And if you're a birder and you love birds, if you're in Florida and you love your corals, this is just a transition that we have to make. I know I sound like a total sort of, I'm always beating this drum, but I'm going to keep beating it because this is just the reality of where we're at. And when you see this record hot summer and you hear about, these stories that are coming out of Texas and other states of these workers who work outside, the guy in Texas who his employers thought was, goofing off and was high on drugs, he was dying from heat, from the heat that his body had absorbed. It wasn't that he was, on meth or something, So it's really, it's really time that we get right-sized. And yes, we do have to push our elected officials to stop this ridiculous subsidy of a power generation source.
Well, we subsidize we subsidize dirty power, and we subsidize dirty agriculture, I would say. The meat industry is subsidized. The chicken industry, animal agriculture is subsidized in this country, and it sickens me. It absolutely sickens me. And we don't have a choice in it. Just like we don't have a choice in the military budget. Now, there's a lot to be angry about, but I would put this on that list. And the world's got to fall in line. And honestly, as I see projects getting greenlit worldwide, it frustrates me. I'm talking about dirty energy projects being greenlit worldwide. We've got to wrap up, Belinda. I love having you on, and these are stories worth following up on. And I think it's sort of, for those who are curious, it's worth taking this sort of sampler that you provide us every week and following up on your own on them. I mean, this is my call to the audience. If you have an interest in this, follow up on it and share with me anything, and I'll push it on to Belinda. You can find Belinda on social media at Belinda Waymouth. You see we have it up there through the segment. Waymouth is Waymouth. I also want to congratulate you on a personal level for beating cancer. Tough. And I love it.
You. Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, I'm tough.
You are tough, kid. Love you. Thank you. Belinda Waymouth, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. See you next week.
Yes.
More.
It's the planet stupid. No. It's the planet stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
In our last few minutes, I wanted to thank, I'll take some comments here in a second, but Trevor in Concord always gets that.
No.
Turned around quickly. 2024. Yeah, that's MAGA Mickey. Trump 2024. Trump 2024. I know it's funny, but boy, I hate to say it. We were laughing at Trump in 2016. He pulled it off.
Yeah.
Today's visit with David Katz was not an encouraging one.
No.
I also wanted to get to some of these comments. So can I do that now, Tony, as well? Do you mind if I hit some?
The Mark Thompson Show.
Trump cannot get a Republican nomination. He will consider that a path to victory. Violence on Election Day in November 24 will halt voting in some states. This is really interesting and it's disturbing, and I wonder, and Nesty says this, whether it will come to pass. There will certainly be they're already sowing the seeds for there to be questions about the next election. I don't know if there will be violence, but to predict intimidation of some sort, I think is a pretty safe prediction. You can take that Belinda banner down, probably. I don't know if you can take that down. The original model of rideshare, we were talking about Uber earlier, and the fact that the promise of Uber is sort of the promise of streaming. It just goes up in one big poof. The original model of rideshare was the driver got most of the fare. Since then, the companies have slowly taken a bigger and bigger portion. Yeah, that's what I was saying before. I mean, they essentially, they screw both the user and the driver. Champagne Wishes says, what a union rep told me when I was a part-time employee, I'll quote it, you don't have a medical plan because your coworkers didn't want to fight for you.
You're talking about the writer's strike, actor strike.
Yeah, I guess this is all related to that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in that same, Farshid says they are all protesting AI taking their jobs while it's just making the studios speed up the process to get rid of them. I don't know what choice they have. They have to do that, I think. Do watch out, Matt. That Marky Mouth is coming for you, says Quinn. Oh, yeah, Matt. I don't know what happened with him, but he was stepping out of line today. Thanks to everybody, Pinky and everybody else who has contributed today. SF Bay Playway. From the real KGO audience, a big shout out to everybody who tosses us super stickers and super chat and keeps the show on. Sadly, we need your support. I really do appreciate it. So thank you for that. Lori says, here's where I blame CNN and MSNBC for helping Trump. Has no one learned from 2015, 2016, she says in capital letters. Capital letters means she is yelling.
Why are you yelling?
Nonstop coverage helps him and helps raise money. Supporters consider him a martyr. They think he's smart for grifting. Lori, sadly, Donald Trump is good for clicks. He's good for eyeballs. He's good for ratings. And so these are not public institutions, CNN, MSNBC. And so they need the clicks and they need people watching them. Why do you think Bill Barr is booked on CNN? Why do you think The Trump lawyers are booked on CNN and MS. It's
But also, it's historic, as you said yesterday. I mean, it is newsworthy. So while you don't want to cover him, you kind of have to cover him because this is an indictment for conspiracy against the United States by a former president. So how do you not, cover it wall to wall? Because this is huge. It's huge.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. What Kim just said is absolutely right. This is not like a rally. I can understand that's really where 2015 and 2016 can be distinct from what is going on now. They were literally putting on rallies, Trump rallies, and just letting them go wall to wall on CNN, on MS. So this is different. I think Kim is really right about that. Russ says he'll use this to further grift his gullible base. Yeah, I agree.
A base
and
which
finally,
is footing his legal bills right now.
No, exactly. Yeah. Robert B says Marcus is such a braggart. 3 expensive coffee grinders. That's right.
Wow. Do you know who I am?
I am
kind of a big deal.
coffee grinder guy. That's right. I do have the 3 Burr grinders, and I have my Coachella Valley coffee, and I'm very happy. And finally, this is what I've been saying on this show since the beginning. You heard it from David Katz as well. Vicky in Sausalito says, yes, Merrick Garland dragged his feet. Inexcusable. Yes, he did. And this whole idea that Merrick Garland's so great and he's the kind of guy you want in there, and he's, as usual, the Democrats play namby-pamby while the Republicans are ruthless. And it shouldn't be partisan. It should be right and wrong. But you got a guy who attempted a coup and almost made it. And somehow he's been allowed to skate and will ultimately be allowed to skate. And we can talk more about that. You want to talk about the deep state? The deep state isn't after Trump. The deep state is saving Trump's ass if there is a deep state. It's the institutions of Washington. And Merrick Garland slow-walked it. Sorry to be so heavy here on the way out, but I mean, it's just the facts, and once in a while I can't help it. I get in there, I get agitated, I get emotional, I get passionate.
Why are you yelling?
It just happens.
Why I love you.
Oh my God. But we've learned a lot about each other this last couple of hours. And we should do this again tomorrow. Tomorrow, Friday Fabulous Florida, Michael Shore and Jim Avila, Michael Snyder, the Culture Blaster. Come on,
why are you yelling?
It's gonna be great, that's why.
It's gonna be really good.
And your Coachella Valley coffee should be coming to a lot of you by then. Oh, it's gonna be great, great, great. Tony,
why are you yelling?
You rocked it today. You brought David Katz in from the
Thanks, Tony.
From the great beyond. Yeah, and you got us on the air.
Thanks, Tony.
Kim is next on the After Party Live.
For the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
The link is in the chat, everybody. After Party Live. You can find it over on the After Party Live channel. All right. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.